So in this analysis, I want to provide justice for Joan's character in the show Girlfriends, for those who aren't familiar, what we will be analyzing today and the characters that were just now depicted. So for those who have watched my other analysis where I depicted Joan and Toni's dynamic, we could see that, or rather we could see from that analysis, I was highlighting how Joan played a part in, her and Toni's severed relationship, or them, enduring some kind of conflict or friction. But in this analysis, I want to show how Toni actually played a role in them having disagreements, and honestly, how Toni's selfishness sabotaged the friendship. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and hop right in. So just to go ahead and start off this analysis and not waste any time, I want to dissect the clip that was played at the very beginning of this analysis. So as we could see, Toni was begging and pleading to get back in good graces with Joan. And what I loved about Joan's response is she depicted how to set boundaries with a toxic friend, especially a friend who has a parasitic nature. And I'm going to go ahead and get into that later on in this analysis. So Joan was communicating with Toni that she was taking inventory of all the times that she was super patient with Toni and she would extend grace to Toni, but it just seemed to be that Toni was actively trying to sabotage whatever efforts that Joan was trying to implement in her life, whether it be professionally or even relationally. Now, the interesting thing about Joan, though, is this clip, in my opinion, depicts when friendships come to an end and where you sometimes just have to leave it at that and not revisit it for the sake of your own benefit. Because once it was all said and done, there was still friction in this dynamic. And I feel like that friendship ending could be better depicted in my other analysis that I posted on my page, where Issa and Molly from the show Insecure were my muse. Because when we sit with Joan's statement as far as taking note of all the times that Toni sabotaged her, but also picking up on when it's convenient, Toni utilizes manipulation to her benefit to get access, to regain access to Joan, with no intentions of really reciprocating the effort that Joan puts out into the friendship. Instead, she's interested in consuming all of the benefits that come with being associated with Joan. And Toni even admitted this in another clip of the show where she actually started dating Joan's ex and brought Joan's ex to her house. But if you pay attention to what she said, as far as they've always shared everything since they were in grade school, if you pay attention to statements like that, you will realize that there are some friendships that you think are rock solid or that are rooted in reciprocity, but it's really based on exploitation, meaning that there are some people who will only stay in association with you because they know how they can benefit from you, but they have no intentions of reciprocating. So as we saw in that clip, Toni showed no remorse for dating Joan's ex, and her reasoning was, well, we've shared everything since the 5th grade. And what Toni was really communicating was, this is the dynamic of our friendship. I overstepped Joan's boundaries, and because she acts like she doesn't care, or she acts like that she forgives me, or she's indifferent, I get to keep disrespecting this person and taking from this person without any consequences. Now, it's important to note this. When it comes to friendships, the reason why it's so important to extend grace and forgiveness to one another is because no one's perfect. And that's a part of us extending that love and that consideration to people that we care about. And friendships are no exception. However, with this dynamic here, I think that this differentiates somebody who may lack self-awareness and may require being patient from somebody who is only associated with us because of what they perceive we can do for them and how we can benefit them. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they value us or have intentions of being a friend to us. So as we could see from that clip, Joan and Charles were having a disagreement. And pretty much Charles was stating, well, it's not that I necessarily had an issue with being with you. I just didn't want to feel like I was being told what to do. And what was interesting about that is Toni felt compelled to interject to defend Charles in her relationship or situationship, whatever it was, with Charles, rather than coming to the defense of her friend, even though she was in the wrong. And instances like this show us when we're dealing with someone who views our association with us as transactional and it's not rooted in camaraderie. And I believe that it was easy for Toni in that clip in particular to be insensitive towards Joan and to throw Joan under the bus is because she secretly harbored feelings of envy towards Joan. And to better explain that lack of loyalty, I'm going to read the section in the book titled No Honor Among Thieves. A way to identify an envious person, and in particular, an envious person in your friend group, is you will realize that they have an issue extending loyalty to those that they're associating themselves with. And I feel like that this fits Toni's character to the T because she often had a self-centered, entitled, selfish presentation. And the excerpt reads, "Understand that when you are dealing with envious persons, you are dealing with someone who has no qualms about jeopardizing someone else. Envious individuals can often be observed in their own friend groups because they will compete with and sabotage one another. This is because when there is envy, there is no honor nor loyalty, not even to those whom they call friends or family. An innocent bystander is no exception." And that lack of loyalty on Toni's behalf was exacerbated due to her parasitic tendencies. And I also want to read another section in the book, which is actually the leech envious archetype, to describe Toni's character a little bit more and why this type of person in a friend group can be dangerous. The section in the book states, "A leech does not simply want something similar. They want exactly what you have in the same manner you received it and around the same time. Do not be fooled when a leech starts to imitate you. It is not flattery. When someone is imitating you out of envy, a lack of caution will give room for the leech to turn the imitation into a metaphorical assassination." So I know in my previous analysis, I depicted how Joan had displayed some signs of jealousy or envy towards Toni, but I want to provide a different perspective in this alternative analysis. There are some situations where, due to our association with the person who is parasitic, we realize that there are areas of our life that are depleted and that's lacking some kind of momentum and progress. And it's because we're around somebody who is either feeding into negative thinking patterns because they're constantly fueling division and competition towards us, which leads to self-doubt, or we're being depleted of valuable resources that we need to exert in other spaces so that we're able to see that progress actualize. So in sum, Joan's dynamic with Toni teaches us that when we set a boundary with a parasitic friend or a parasitic associate, we have to stand firm on those boundaries. Because in the context of dealing with a friend who is displaying signs of envy, a leopard doesn't change its spots. And just because we're comfortable with something or we're used to something, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't let it go. All right, babes, so that's all that I have for my Justice for Joan analysis. Thank you so much for tuning in. And of course, please feel free to share your perspective, your opinions, your takes on it in the comment section below. Talk to you in the next one, babes. Take care.